Welcome to the Fast Mode podcast. With us today, we have Bejoy Pankajakshan, the EVP, Chief Technology and Strategy Officer at Mavenir. Hi, Bejoy. Nice to say hi to you.
Hey there, good to be on the show.
Okay, great. We are catching up, from last week where India Mobile Congress 2022 took place. A few words there about the event, some of the highlights that you want to share with us.
Sure, it was my visit back to the India Mobile Congress after 3 years. The last time I was there was before COVID time, and I would say the mood this time was entirely different. The fact that it was a historic event for India, the inauguration of 5G by the Prime Minister, really set off a different tone. And the way the launch happened with really highlighting the use cases uh, of what 5G could enable in India and how 5G would reach out to the billions of users in the next couple of years, and all the three carriers or four carriers enthusiastic about the 5G launch. I think that set the tone, and the floor was buzzing with activity for 3 days. I mean, you could see government officials, vendors, customers all showed up. So I was pretty excited about the show, and also very excited about what India has in store for vendors like Mavenir, because I remember PM in his speech talked about how smaller industries could be brought together as part of this 5G, because you could actually disaggregate and have newer companies show up. And that's the whole concept of open networks. He was indirectly alluding to that. So I thought that was an exciting thing for Make in India initiative, as well as for vendors like Mavenir, who have a significant base in India.
Exciting things ahead then. So that's great. I think So the big topic, I think one of the big topics covered would be the era of 5G. It's unfolding right in front of our eyes now with all the deployments, the NSAs, and now we have the standalone deployments taking shape. Talking about 5G, one of the biggest topics that around 5G would be the Open RAN ecosystem. I would like to know your views on the state of the Open RAN ecosystem.
Sure. So, in our view, when we look at where Open RAN is today, first let's look at who are the vendors really participating in this ecosystem. The good thing is with the Open RAN ecosystem, we've been able to disaggregate the networks, and that the original promise was a level of disaggregation which is not what we see being deployed today. Mostly what we see with Open RAN deployments is where you mix the baseband, the CUDU, with a third party RU vendor. So that level of disaggregation is already happening with players like NEC, Fujitsu, MTI, Compa, and many others, new players who are there as well, providing RRUs, and then baseband that's given by Mavenir or some other player. The traditional NAPs have not opened to that model unless it's been forced by an operator, and that's starting to take place as well. If we look at where most of the action has been in the US, it's been Dish that's been driving the Open RAN solution. Today they have more than 6,000 sites up and live, and they're on track to meet the FCC requirement, which is 70% coverage by June 2023. So that's going well. The tier one operators, the brownfield operators in the US, are trialing activity in Open RAN. It's not public yet as to when they plan to eventually get it in their network. There's some discussions about having even the incumbent vendors adhere to the Open RAN specifications. At least Verizon has been publicly talking about that. In Europe, there's a lot of momentum with Open RAN, primarily because there is memorandum of understanding that the big five in Europe, Orange, Deutsche Telekom, and others, have come up with, and there's even requirement that the government in UK has to have 30% of the network Open RAN based by 2030. I forget if it's 25 or 30%, but there's a target that's set to be Open RAN based by 2030. So we're seeing activity that's driven through the government in the European market. In Asia Pacific markets, you have, of course, in Japan, Rakuten has been driving a lot of that activity. We're also seeing interest in India. For example, with Airtel, we had showcased in Punjab to to the Department of Telecommunications, an Open RAN based solution, and there are discussions happening with multiple operators in India to take the Open RAN ecosystem to multiple carriers. One of the earlier challenges has been with getting radios that are Open RAN compatible, but now that challenge has been addressed through the ecosystem of RRU vendors who are entering the space. And now the bigger challenge was entering into the solution set for brownfield operators, because most of them want NSA deployment, which means you need to interoperate with the incumbent. And the good thing is that that work has been driven by several tier one brownfield operators, and we are now doing X2 IoT, which is the interface that enables the NSA interworking. That work has been ongoing, and the traditional vendors have been asked to work with players like Mavenir to open up that interface and be able to roll out Open RAN based solutions in incumbent brownfield deployments rather than just waiting for an overlay standalone network deployment.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, well, a lot of progress being made in that area. So we are also looking at the trends towards automation. So while we see all these deployments taking shape and some service providers being ahead of others, what about the strides in the automation part? How close are we to the fully automated Open RAN networks?
Full automation is something that is a journey, I would say, because you'll have multiple phases of automation that happens in the network. I mean, you would eventually lead to intent-based automation. There's automation that would involve aspects of the RIC, which is one of the key components of Open RAN, is the radio intelligent controller, and how you would evolve the network performance and programmability of the full network using the radio intelligent controller. That's a key part which is not there today. But if you're just talking about automation in terms of how fast you're able to bring up new cell sites and turn up new CUDUs, that part is there, where it used to take months or days to enable the software on a cell site. Once the physical rollout has happened, now we're able to turn up these sites in a matter of minutes. So, for example, with Dish, at the peak of the deployment time, when we had to meet the initial 20% FCC requirement, was mid June 2022, so a few months ago, we were turning up around 300 to 400 CUs on AWS a night. And that's the kind of pace at which we were turning on, and that was possible because we had automation enabled. The pipelines were integrated with AWS in this case, and even the cell side DU implementation was fully automated. This was with VMware's pipeline. And so at least that piece of it has been fully automated, and we're able to noticeably cut down the time that's required to actually roll out these new services. And the increase in service velocity has been made a reality even in the Open RAN, the radio, the RAN space with these architectures. And let's not forget, one of the key drivers of doing this automation is to have common automation tools that you could leverage across the end-to-end network. So virtualization and at least services-based architecture has been well defined for the packet core in standards. So you see more operators drive towards good automation within the core of the network, but then you also want to leverage similar tools for onboarding, lifecycle management, for the rest of your network as well. Otherwise, the whole concept of automated networks, where the end goal is to be able to first do these things more proactively, figure out these faults more proactively, as well as being able to manage the network better through analytics. So that's possible only if you're providing this data into common data lake. So these observability layer and automation, they all tie together to be able to run these networks more efficiently. So we're getting there with Open RAN, and there'll be a lot more in the future, especially when you start rolling out use cases with applications that come through the radio intelligent controller, be it the near real-time RIC or the non-real-time RIC.
Okay, great. So, One of the enablers, in automation as well as the move towards Open RAN would be the move to cloud native. So let's talk about, why operators should consider going cloud native, and what are some of the prerequisites for a successful cloud native strategy?
Yes, so cloud native definition has been evolving over the years because when operators were looking at open stack based deployments, vendors were claiming software was cloud native. The good thing is at least now we're seeing an agreement across the industry to say what is really cloud native software. And that requires applications to be really decoupling from underlying hardware. The software should be able to run in multi-cloud environments, and it well adheres with Mavenir's vision and strategy as well, which is a any cloud strategy. Means we could run in multiple cloud environments, be it the private telco cloud using Red Hat, VMware, or Mavenir's own distribution, or running in public clouds like AWS, Google, Azure. We've had a long relationship with AWS. Just at the India Mobile Congress, we announced our strategic partnership with Google. So that work is sort of testament to the cloud native strategy that we put in place. And of course, I talked about, to your earlier question, I talked about the significance of having common tools for management instead of vertical custom tooling requiring different expertise across different domains in your network. All of that could change when you have cloud native solutions in the network. And of course, the transition from 4G to 5G, it's introduced the standalone core, which is truly cloud native. And Open RAN is another example of cloud native workload. We talked about how automation tooling is available today with the Open RAN solution set. And if you think about the cloud native tooling, CI/CD, DevOps, and orchestration are sort of foundational tools in the whole cloud native application automation. And this is true for telco workloads as well. CI/CD, for example, would allow you to roll out new features much faster. So you could try out new services in your network, and automation will drive scale, efficiency, and reliability across the network. So, for example, as the networks grow and the environments change, we want to reduce the human intervention because the biggest factor for outages or failures that happen in network is human intervention and mistakes that can happen introduced by humans. So automation procedures, it can evaluate current state, compare it to what's the intended state, and then take actions needed to adjust the network parameters. So the operations team spending their time on automation, they could rather go do something else, or operators could focus more on other activities. And this is something that we've seen very successfully done by the hyperscalers. The ratio of employee to the number of nodes managed is significantly higher when you look at the hyperscaler environment versus what is in the telco operator environment today. So you want to drive towards that. There are some specific telco requirements which is now being adapted for hyperscaler environment as well. So overall, I think we are on a journey, and different operators are in different stages. The key here is using vendors that can actually support the full cloud native deployment. And even for the future, when we talk about all of this and how AI ML with 5G is very critical for the future, this is where newer use cases for different verticals can only be realized with the software that's cloud native. So be it in manufacturing, where you want to improve quality, or in healthcare, where you want to do um, automation to actually guarantee a certain quality of service because you could scale the network as needed. So these are all use cases in future which can benefit from the network being cloud native and integrated with the right automation tools.
Okay, so that's interesting. So with the broad portfolio that Mavenir offers, including, of course, Open RAN, how are you guys speeding up customers' entry to a new era of operations and service enablement?
So if we look at Mavenir's history, we started in 2005. We're now around, what, 17, 18 years. The company was always focused on software. So for us, the operator journey from 3G to 4G for voice was one avenue in which we helped them actually make that transition within software. So voice over LTE, when that happened, we were helping our customers with product sets, enabling the transition with interworking functions, as well as then once wider scale deployment of VoLTE happened, we were able to give them new services on top of VoLTE to be able to sell and monetize on 4G, even on 4G. And since then, we've been expanding our portfolio with Packet Core and now Open RAN based solution sets as well. And all goes back to the idea that you could do things in software. And we didn't get into the Open RAN space until 6 years ago when you could actually do this processing on x86 processors rather than custom ASIC. So for us, enabling our operators to work in an open silicon environment, so not being limited by the feature set that could come from one operator, but giving the control back to them, putting them back on the steering wheel so they could drive programmability features in their network. That's what's going to be key to future of 5G. When you talk about serving a diverse set of applications that can cover not just humans and smartphones, but you're catering to a very type of device sets, and you want to tune performance and program requirements on a per user, per device, per slice requirement perspective, that requires programmability that you don't want to be limited by a feature set of an individual vendor. And that's where openness becomes so key to delivering the future set of requirements. And that's where Mavenir truly believes that we can differentiate and help our operator customers.
Okay, okay, great. So, yeah, as we make progress into these areas and in terms of fulfilling the customer requirements, and just like what you have pointed out, I'm sure that there are a lot of challenges that operators would see as they move to the next phase of their 5G strategies. So, what's your view on this?
So just to be clear, when we talk about the next phase of 5G strategy, even today when we look at 5G, yeah, there's a lot of 5G deployments that have happened, but the majority of them, say for maybe around 20 deployments, are still NSA-based deployments. And truly, if you talk about 5G, to be able to leverage the benefits of 5G around slicing and be able to support the different types of new use cases which are uplink latency sensitive, you need standalone deployment. So even outside of that, there's still a journey happening with operators transitioning to standalone. But I'd say the monetization of 5G has been kind of the key questions, a challenge for the operators as they start to build out 5G. As you know, when the transition to 4G happened, operators essentially just became a bit pipe. They tried to monetize, but then vendors or new players like Uber and Lyft and others showed up over the top, and they became the guys who actually generated value out of the 4G connectivity. And the operator challenge in 5G is also going to be how exactly they don't turn into a bit pipe even in this journey. By giving all this fat connectivity and having better content available to consumers and enterprises, they don't want to be left out of the value chain as monetization happens in a layer above them. So 5G's open architecture, of course, is going to allow the operators to offer new services in addition to just being a connectivity pipe. But which services has potential, be it smart factory or industrial automation, in future autonomous vehicles. These are all things they need to start looking at and planning ahead. They need to figure out what's the role they're going to play in this journey. Are they just going to be a connectivity enabler? Are they going to go higher up the value chain in terms of integrating services that are industry specific and become a true service provider, which was the whole intent of 5G, because you're now catering to different industry. 5G is the first case where people are talking about it from a use case perspective rather than just being a connectivity. So going back to India 5G launch, right? What was really interesting was when the Prime Minister was actually using 5G to talk to remote villages, talk to the students in schools, and it shows the power of 5G because you could now realize a ton of new use cases. So looking at the monetization aspect of 5G is going to be key. And there are several features which in 5G and in these new networks that can help these operators monetize. So be it network slicing with standalone networks, but or having open networks and bringing the ecosystem of new players, system integrators, the partnership with hyperscalers for private network deployments. So these are all capabilities that's being built into the open disaggregated networks of 5G that we believe would allow the operators to monetize 5G and position them better and put them in a steering wheel, be able to play higher up in the value chain.
Okay, that's brilliant. Yeah, I guess monetization it will always be telecoms, biggest challenge. It was in 3G, and then like what you rightly pointed out, with the OTT in 4G, and now yes, again we are looking at how it's the applications that are being one of the biggest push factors for the implementation of 5G. So we want to see how this time around telcos would want to monetize that. So I think you touched quite a bit on the next question that I wanted to ask, which is the trends that Mavenir is seeing, not just in India but globally. As multiple industries invest in technologies enabling open automated mobile networks. So what's your take on these trends?
Yeah, so I would say, of course, drive towards open network is one key thing. All the operators want to avoid vendor lock-in. They want to be back in control, and openness is one of the key things there. And the RAN being the most expensive part of the operator network, they want to drive open RAN based solutions. The question is, what's the time frame in which they do that, and what's the pace at which they want to do it, and the method and manner in which they would introduce it into the network as an overlay, integrate into brownfield deployments, introduce in for certain solutions like say the private network solutions to begin with, or an FWA use case, or look at rural markets, try out the technology before you bring it into suburban and urban, dense urban kind of locations. So open is open drive towards getting open disaggregated network is a key trend that we see. Of course, another big one is what's the end goal of doing that? And that's end-to-end intelligent, data-driven mobile network management. We talked about how critical automation is. So in this time, there's an increased focus in how all the key domains are standardized with open architecture, and in the process, how application data and as well as operational metrics, the observability part of it, is exposed to common data lakes, and the data-driven network orchestration management with its workflow loops is a key part of focus that we see across operators, be it brownfield or greenfield operators. Just this week, T-Mobile had an announcement with Google and how they wanted to look at Google Analytics and AI to drive customer experience improvement. So it's multiple aspects that people are looking at. Intelligence is a mandatory next step for automated mobile networks, and that's where, from our perspective, we see the RIC, a radio intelligent controller, which brings in AI ML into the Open RAN architecture, is so critical to drive intelligence out of your network. And cloud nativeness and driving towards cloud nativeness, which is again a journey in itself, because telcos have certain applications which are so legacy with legacy protocols, which then becomes quite cumbersome to convert these applications into a cloud native solution set. And when we talk about a fully automated end-to-end network, be it the future intent-driven mobile network or today's network, which is automated to a certain extent, some of the key ingredients there to actually realize the success, you need to be able to utilize the data, as I mentioned earlier. And that's the key trend, the foundational trend that I would say that all operators are driving towards. And Mavenir is helping operators in all of these different trends and to be able to eventually monetize their networks.
Okay, so Really, very good, very great insights into some of the most glaring topics that we have today when it comes to 5G. Of course, Open RAN and moving on to the automated networks, and we touched a bit about cloud native strategy. So yeah, I think it's been a really good chat, and I thank you for your time and. Yeah, so any last words that for Mavenir, what can we expect? What's in store? Maybe just some words there.
Sure. So Mavenir has always been on the forefront of cutting edge technology. So for us, as we look at 5G, it truly gives us the opportunity to innovate further, be it for a consumer market or for the enterprise market. And we are working closely with operators across the globe, the US, Europe, India, and other operators. And we look forward to launching new services in 5G with these operators. And vendors like Mavenir are required because software is the future. Software is what's going to drive the networks. Intelligence and software is what's going to drive the future networks. And that's where Mavenir as a company excels. And so we believe there is a significant opportunity, a significant market ahead for Mavenir and our operator customers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bejoy, for those insights and for your time today.
Thank you. Thanks for talking to me today.
Okay, so yeah, so that brings us to the end of today's chat. Okay, so see you guys again.
Thank you.